Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You know what's absolutely wild? We got this whole mainstream media machine that supposedly is always at the cutting edge of information that always presents all the expert opinions and expert analysis. But for some reason, some random dude on TikTok with a handful of plastic containers just did a better job at explaining Trump's entire economic strategy than every so-called expert on CNN, MSNBC, CNBC combined. No charts, no jargon, no suits, no fancy graphics or fancy titles, no, just simple visuals and plain talk, and most importantly, an actual honest analysis. And of course, it made more sense than anything that we've heard from these overpaid, out-of-touch analysts, who I might add are pretty much wrong about everything relating to Trump since back in 2016. We got these absolute clowns in the media who are constantly pretending that they know best, they know better. Meanwhile, we got this random base dude who breaks the whole thing down in 3 freaking minutes, better than they ever could. And he's showing very clearly how Trump's plan isn't about economic destruction. It's actually about rebuilding, refinancing the debt, lowering the interest burden, finding efficiencies, using tariffs as a new revenue source for the federal government to replace taxes on hardworking Americans, and of course, ultimately, getting the country on a path towards a balanced budget. I know, a crazy concept to all these idiot left-wing Keynesian economists. Alright folks, so I want to show you guys this clip that I stumbled upon. We got this guy who pulls out these little plastic containers, each one representing a different chunk of government spending, and then on the other side you've got government tax revenues, and just look at how he visually explains the whole Scott Bessent Trump strategy.
This is your tax revenues of the United States of America. It's about 17% of GDP. The biggest spending in the United States goes to welfare. This is closely followed by Medicaid. And then after that, we've got defense, we've got interest payments on debt. There is a big shortage of revenues compared with your costs. And that is especially because the interest on the debt is getting bigger all the time. When you spend more than your revenues, that is called a budget deficit. He said, here's my 4 plans to fix the budget deficit and this unsustainable debt path that we're on. Number 1, we have to grow the economy. Now, you don't grow an economy by increasing taxes. No, we've got to cut taxes. One of these disappears straight away. The only way to increase your revenues when you're cutting taxes is to get the economy bigger, because this is a percentage of GDP. Bigger GDP equals a higher real number. Secondly, we've got to cut interest rates. That makes the debt interest payment in the future more sustainable. Co-President Musk comes into play. You've got to cut the spending. You've got to sack all those consultants. You've got to start laying off public sector workers, but that's all right because you're growing the economy. Therefore, there's more private sector jobs to take up the slack. So unemployment rate doesn't go up. Unemployment not going higher means that interest rates can go down. Next, you slap a load of tariffs on foreign countries that aren't paying their fair share, and therefore you start to build this revenue side. Now remember, the two don't have to equal each other. Traditionally, tax revenues are about 18% of GDP, and spending in most Western economies is around about 22%. Why can governments spend 4% more as a percentage of GDP than they take in tax and revenues? Well, it's down to GDP growth and inflation. This is where inflation is a government's friend. It might not help you with the cost of your groceries, but it does mean over time, if you manage to grow your economy by 2% a year through productivity gains or through demographics, then stick 2% inflation on top of that, meaning you get real GDP growth of 2% and you get nominal GDP growth of 4%. That is the difference between your tax revenues of 18 and your spending of 22. Now, the next thing you do to help the economy grow is deregulate the banks. If banks are lending more, companies can borrow, they can hire more staff, and they can expand their profits. There is some additional tax revenue from that corporation tax. As you cut interest payments, you cut a little bit out of defense and you get rid of a lot of consultants and you start to charge some of your friends some tariffs slowly. You build the economy, you get economic growth going up again, and you've got your balanced budget.
It's perfect, no? And I think a lot of people are visual learners, and they kind of struggle to see the situation that the country's in. But when you see it visually, it's got to be a wake-up call, right? When the government's collecting like $4 or $5 trillion in taxes, but then spending 6, 7, and every year you're stacking trillions of dollars of debt, and then on top of it, interest rates are high, and so you're paying trillions of dollars in interest payments, and then the debt's just stacking endlessly, nearing $40 trillion by the end of this decade. When you see it visually, it starts to really strike, hey, what the hell are we doing? You know, like we always say, you wouldn't run your personal life like that. You know, sure, some debt can be okay, a mortgage, a business loan, leveraging debt when you have actual income and cash flow that's properly servicing the debt is one thing, but debt that you can't afford, just taking massive credit card debt and sinking deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole, it's just irresponsible. And again, like I keep saying, they keep telling us that Trump's the crazy one. Trump's being reckless and irresponsible. But the goal is simple, to refinance the debt at lower rates, just like a smart homeowner with a massive mortgage. Trump is looking at the interest portion of America's national debt and saying we need to get this number down or we are going to continue to bleed out. And to do that, he's pushing policies that are going to shake the market short term because lower market confidence in the short term means rate cuts from the Fed. And then once those lower rates are secured, he can then refinance the debt, bringing down the interest payment. Not to mention, if interest rates start coming lower, well, that's good for business owners. That's good for the private sector. And if you stack on top of that a reduction in taxes, it's the exact environment that stimulates private sector growth and productivity. So there's obviously a fully fledged plan here with all these different elements that are all playing into each other. They want lower rates because they think it's going to be beneficial. And then on top of that, we got DOGE, Elon's Department of Government Efficiency Task Force, that's combing through the entire federal government looking for inefficiencies, waste, fraud, useless programs, overpriced contracts, the typical bureaucratic grift. And what they're looking to do is also cut down spending without gutting the services. They want to streamline the machine so it doesn't collapse under its own bloated weight. And then on top of it, they want to use tariffs as well. Instead of raising taxes on the American people or on American companies, Trump's trying to get foreign entities that are benefiting from the American market to pay it forward so the government can collect tax revenues not from its citizens, but from foreign entities. And that's why he's going after the worst offenders in trade, countries that exploit the American consumer, dump cheap goods in the market, and then close off their own markets to American products. They're viewing tariffs as a way of collecting new revenue without squeezing the middle class. And the idea is using this combination of fiscal policy to reduce government spending, reduce the debt interest payments, bring down the total cost every single year, and then try to match the government revenues to do what exactly? To create a balanced budget. And to do that in very strategic fashion while simultaneously reducing the tax burden on regular people and companies. In other words, they're telling you Trump is crazy, but it seems like he's the first politician in my lifetime to have his frickin' head screwed on straight. I mean, clearly running trillion-dollar deficits is not smart economics. I know they tell us it's modern monetary theory, but what it really feels like is financial seppuku for the nation. And it's a burden that's being put on the next generation. Every dollar that's borrowed to prop up the current status quo to pay all these useless, spoiled bureaucrats and benefit the retired boomer class is a dollar that young Americans are going to be forced to repay with higher taxes, higher inflation, and less opportunity in the future. It's simply not sustainable, and frankly, I think it's immoral. And for so long, no one in Washington ever had the balls to take it on. That's the reality, except Trump. It's funny because everyone talks about the debt, right? Reducing the deficit, balanced budget. But no one ever actually does something about it. But now Donald Trump has a play to actually tackle the issue, and he's like Satan reincarnated. It's unbelievable. But again, Donald Trump's proving to the world, at least in my view, that he's the real frickin' deal. He's not in it for himself. He's in it for the country. Donald Trump's not thinking about the next YouGov poll. He's not thinking about what the New York Times is going to write about him. He's thinking about the next generation. He's willing to take the personal hit now by enacting policies that will cause short-term pain to prevent the whole system from collapsing tomorrow. He's willing to be the villain in the short term because he knows that in the end, the country's going to be better off. And honestly, once you open your eyes to that, it's commendable because this is what real leadership is. While every other coward that's entered DC over the last couple of decades just keep kicking the can further down the road, Trump is doing it different. He's grabbing the steering wheel and getting the vehicle back on track so it doesn't veer off the frickin' cliff. At least that's the way I see it. I could be wrong, but based on the information that's available to me, based on my analysis, it seems that's the play. To balance the budget, and not only to make America healthy again, but to make the American economy healthy again. They say he's a villain, but honestly, he might be the hero that America needs. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got for you guys on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.